Society loves the concept of the tortured genius, the brilliant mind that solves the world's puzzles with a confident smirk. They tell you from a young age that a high IQ is a superpower, a golden ticket to a superior and successful existence. But standing in the quiet, isolating solitude of your own life, perhaps staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, you know the suffocating truth. High intelligence isn't a superpower. It is a relentless, exhausting curse. It is a sensory and psychological assault that you never asked for, and more importantly, that you can never ever turn off. Think about what actually happens when you simply walk into a room. While others see a party, a meeting, or a casual gathering of friends, your brain instantly initiates a forced, involuntary data download. In a matter of 5 seconds, you aren't just seeing faces, you are reading the underlying tragic architecture of human frailty. You see the desperate posturing of a fragile ego standing in the corner. You hear the subtle, defensive tremor in a colleague's laugh. You instantly decode the micro-expressions of insecurity, the hidden agendas, and the polite, socially acceptable lies everyone is feeding each other. You don't want this information. You didn't ask to see the ugly scaffolding behind the theater, but this hypercognitive empathy operates completely without your consent. It is not a magical gift of emotional intelligence. It is a violent intrusion of data that drains your cognitive battery before you have even spoken a single word. It hurts your soul to understand exactly why people act the way they do. And then you watch them. You watch the normal people. You see them laughing effortlessly at a shallow joke, existing entirely on the pleasant surface of the moment, completely unaware of the psychological crossfire happening right next to them. And in that quiet observation, a dark, silent envy washes over you, a heavy, almost shameful resentment. You look at their effortless ease, and you secretly, desperately wish you could be just a little bit stupider. You wish you could just smile, take things at face value, and exist without dissecting the structural integrity of every single interaction. For you, the phrase, "ignorance is bliss," is not a tired cliche. It is a haunting, agonizing reality. It is a desperate, unanswered prayer for a quiet mind, but the quiet never comes. No matter how much you crave the bliss of not knowing, your analytical engine keeps roaring, analyzing, and overheating. Which brings us to the most agonizing clinical question of all. If this hyper-awareness is actively destroying your peace, why does your brain absolutely refuse to build an off switch? Let's peel back the psychological layers and look at the actual neurological machinery that is driving you to the edge of your sanity. When you tell people that you overthink, they usually nod sympathetically and tell you to just take a deep breath or to stop worrying so much. They fundamentally misunderstand the problem. They think your overthinking is a symptom of standard, everyday anxiety. It isn't. Your overthinking isn't a glitch of emotion, it is a relentless, inescapable feature of your neurological hardware. To understand why you can never simply exist in the quiet peace of the moment, we have to look at a specific system in your brain known as the default mode network, or the DMN. In a neurotypical brain, the DMN activates when the mind is at rest, when a person is casually daydreaming, recalling a fond memory, or gently imagining the future. It's a low-energy, peaceful background process. But in a hyper-analytical, neurodivergent mind, the default mode network doesn't just hum quietly in the background, it is violently hyperactive. It is chronically engaged, running at a terrifying, overclocked speed, even when you are desperately trying to focus on the present. Imagine possessing a state-of-the-art quantum supercomputer, a machine designed by engineers to simulate the birth of galaxies or decode the complexities of the human genome. Now, imagine being forced to use that magnificent, towering machine simply to play a basic game of Minesweeper. That is your brain navigating a standard social interaction. A casual conversation at work or a simple dinner party requires at most 2 or 3 basic variables to navigate successfully. Listen to the words, smile appropriately, and offer a polite response. But your hyperactive DMN cannot restrict itself to 2 variables. In a fraction of a second, it processes 100 invisible, exhausting data points. It calculates the exact microscopic shift in someone's tone of voice, cross-references it with their posture, analyzes their hidden motives, dredges up a memory of a similar interaction from 3 years ago, and instantly generates 20 different simulated futures based on what you might say next. It is a colossal, tragic waste of processing power on utterly useless data. This is the brutal, invisible reality of analysis paralysis. You aren't paralyzed because you don't know what to do. You are paralyzed because your brain has vividly simulated every possible outcome, including the catastrophic ones, and the sheer, crushing weight of that data locks you in place. You are simultaneously living in the ghosts of the past and the vivid anxieties of the future, constantly time-traveling within your own skull. You are everywhere except right here, in the present moment. And a machine running at maximum capacity, processing 100 variables a second just to survive a simple interaction, cannot sustain that temperature indefinitely. The hardware begins to melt. The mental overheating becomes physically painful. And when the noise of the world and the roaring engine of your own mind become completely unbearable, your survival instincts kick in. You do what any complex system does to prevent a catastrophic failure. You shut down non-essential functions. You withdraw. You go quiet. You cancel plans, avoid the break room, and retreat into the absolute solitude of your own space. To the outside world, this sudden retreat looks like rejection. They misread your silence as arrogance, coldness, or a sudden, unexplained apathy. They label you a misanthrope, assuming you simply believe you are better than everyone else and that you hate humanity. But they couldn't be more wrong. Your isolation has absolutely nothing to do with hatred or a superiority complex. It is pure, desperate damage control. It is your hyperactive neurological system entering safe mode to keep the core processor from completely melting down under the weight of external stimuli. What they don't understand, what they could never understand, is the agonizing physical exhaustion required to constantly slow down your own mind just to interact with them. It feels like speaking a complex, intricate language that very few people on this planet actually understand, and being forced to constantly translate your thoughts into the simplest, most basic vocabulary just to make it through a Tuesday afternoon. When you are operating 10 steps ahead, instantly seeing the patterns, the risks, and the underlying emotional architecture of every situation, it is incredibly draining to sit patiently while everyone else struggles to comprehend step one. You spend your days actively diluting your intellect, filtering out the depth of your observations, and holding back your analytical conclusions so you don't intimidate or alienate the people around you. You hide the terrifying speed of your mind behind a polite nod and a shallow smile. But performing that translation, day in and day out, takes a colossal toll. When you finally close your front door and lock the world outside, the silence that greets you isn't just an absence of noise. It is a profound medical relief. It is the only environment where you don't have to translate yourself. It is the only place where your brain isn't violently assaulted by the mundane, the superficial, and the agonizingly mediocre. But as you sit in that quiet room, the sharpest, most painful realization slowly begins to settle in your chest. You have successfully protected your peace, but you have purchased it at the highest possible price: absolute, uninterrupted loneliness. You trade connection for sanity, convincing yourself that this solitary confinement is the only way to survive. You told yourself that the isolation was temporary, just a brief retreat into safe mode to let your overheated cognitive engine finally cool down. But as the days bleed into weeks, a terrifying truth takes hold. The silence isn't healing you anymore. It is slowly becoming a cage. You cannot hide in the dark forever. Eventually, you have to step back out into the noise. But the world out there still cannot survive your true frequency, and you no longer have the energy to translate your soul for their comfort. The safe mode is failing. If you understand the exact frequency of this silence, leave a blank comment below, because a mind this powerful cannot remain in a vacuum indefinitely. If you cannot be understood by the masses, and you can no longer stay hidden in the dark, what is the third option? In our next archive, we will explore the terrifying moment when a hyper-analytical mind simply stops trying. We will dissect the chilling freedom of permanently turning off the forced empathy, and what happens when you finally embrace the absolute darkness of total apathy. Subscribe to The Abyss. File 04 is waiting.